Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today, in celebration of Steve Cropper's birthday, I want to talk about one of my favorite bands of all time. And this is, of course, Booker T and the MGs. Now, their quintessential lineup had their namesake, Booker T. Jones, on the organ, and he was just marvelous. He played a bit of guitar too. Of course, lead guitar was the inimitable Steve Cropper. The classic bass player was the wonderful Donald Duck Dunn, who was able to combine smoking a briar pipe and play the bass at the same time. And on drums, the understated but very groovy Alan Jackson Jr., who sadly had a too young demise. But when they were together, they formed the core of the house band for Stax Records. They backed up the likes of Otis Redding. They played for everyone, both as a group and individually. And they were just marvelous. For me, they were some of the best session musicians of all time. And I talk a lot on this show about why session musicians are generally a cut above most others because they are basically the firemen of the musical world. They don't know what they're getting into, but when someone calls them, they slide down that pole and into the studio. They might be playing with Dean Martin one day, they might be playing with the Rolling Stones the next, they might be doing a commercial that evening, the next morning, they might be on a film score, and that afternoon, they might be responsible for playing guitar and maybe also arranging the string parts for an experimental psychedelic jazz collective. They have to do everything. And some session musicians specialize in some things, mainly because of their reputation or their proclivities. And Booker T and the MGs, while they could and they did play with everyone, sort of wonderful classic soul was their hallmark. And they were one of these bands that really showed that session musicians can achieve stardom in their own right. This was before Toto, for instance. Toto, probably the most famous instance of session musicians becoming stars in their own right. But before Toto, there was Booker T and the MGs, and they just had so many hits. Green Onions was, of course, their first major hit, but they had so many. Think of Hip Hugger, really cool song, really cool album by that same name. Soul Sanction, wonderful song. Booker's Nation from that same album. Um, so much Doing Our Thing was a great album too. They did a great cover of Expressway to Your Heart, a great cover of The Beat Goes On, a great cover of You Keep Me Hanging On. Just again, really good stuff. Then, of course, there was the Booker T written Soul Limbo, really good. The Booker T written Over Easy, and that was from the Soul Limbo album. Then there was Uptight, one of the absolute best albums of the 60s, if you ask me. They just went from strength to strength, and they were so good live. And the surviving members are, of course, still very good live. Well, we've obviously lost Mr. Jackson, we've lost Mr. Dunn, but Booker T and Steve Cropper continue to go strong. And you might also recognize Steve and Donald Duck Dunn from their role in the Blues Brothers, both in the movie and in the backing band behind Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, and they were picked because of their extreme talent. But definitely check them out in their most sort of comfortable and happy place, which was in Booker T and the MGs, because they were one of these bands where whether they were playing their own unique songs that were all very catchy, great riffs, wonderful stuff, or whether they were playing covers, they were one of the best bands of all time. They were the kind of session musicians who could go in there, just play it brilliantly in one take, and that was that. And yeah, I mean, some people like to sort of worship the brooding artist who takes 12 years to write a three-chord song. I tend to like these guys who could just lay it down and play amazingly with a smile on their face, or in Mr. Dunn's case, with a pipe in his mouth. Check them out. You'll have heard some of the stuff, but to just listen to their albums back to back, you won't be disappointed. It was music the way it's supposed to be, virtuosic, but also fun as hell. You'll love it. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.